the star of the show. Oh, hey, Alyssa, just to double check, I've been checking with people, with presenters. Do you need any screen sharing capabilities or anything?
Oh, I wasn't planning on it.
Everybody's doing their own things, just, so I'm just checking.
Yeah, hopefully I wasn't supposed to prepare anything.
No, I told you all that you were perfectly fine. People are kind of all doing things all over the place, and I think that's making this kind of fun. So yeah, all good.
Okay.
And I will give it a few minutes here just to make sure everyone who wants to be on board is on board, and then I'll keep an eye on letting others in. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people so far. We've been having a pretty good showing today, so we're impressed.
That's great.
Yes, happy and impressed. No, I'm glad students are interested. There's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things around here.
Yeah, for sure. Lots of good options.
Yeah.
I like your background. Where was that?
Oh, well, I realized my office is the view of the wall in my office that you see at home is among the least decorated. It has a picture of the Front Range of Colorado. So
Nice.
I found a Colorado picture to use as the back of my screen.
Yeah, very pretty.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Good. Lots of good memories. Well, I'm trying to, I'm eyeing to see I'm not having any others pop up, but I may still wait another minute or two. And are you home or school?
Yeah, I'm at home.
Yeah.
I am lucky. I have like a pretty sweet office set up here at home. So got my own room, can shut the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad for that too, except for I have 2 puppies running around that
Coworkers.
Yes, exactly. Oh yeah, you have a coworker. Where's your coworker puppy?
Oh, well, my cat just walked in the room. Let me see if I can show him.
Let's see here. Nope, not yet. He's hiding.
Oh, yeah, I can't get my computer to show him. He's a big orange boy.
Oh, nice.
Chunky boy. Come here.
Yeah, mine are not amused that they did not get a walk this morning or at noon. Oh, there you go. Oh my God. That cat's bigger than both of my dogs.
Yeah, he's a big one. He was 20 pounds at his largest.
Oh.
He's just big boned.
No, he's sweet. Oh, so beautiful. Oh, sweet boy. I'm going to trade mine in for a cat. Cat bark in the middle of meetings in class. Well, everybody, I'm just keep being mindful of everybody's time. I see it is 3:05 according to one of my clocks and 3:04 according to the other. So I'll go ahead and get it started. So what we'll do is Dr. McGonigle will present a little bit about her research and just her lab and kind of how the role of her research students, research assistants work in her lab. And then we'll cover any questions that you have. So the length of the session is largely up to how many questions you have and what sorts of information we have a chance to cover. So with that, we'll turn it over to Dr. McGonigle, and eager to hear about your lab and experiences.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I am Alyssa McGonagle's. I run a lab called, it's not really a lab, we call it a research group. And the reason for that is that we don't actually bring students into the lab to run studies. I mostly do stuff online, but I'll kind of get to that. I am a relatively new faculty member here at UNC Charlotte. I started here in 2016. Previous to that, I was at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan, where I was a faculty member there in the psychology department as well. Prior to that, I got my PhD at the University of Connecticut in 2011. And my focus is industrial organizational psychology. And so that is the psychology research methods and theories and practices that are applied to workers in the workplace. So basically, I study how to make work more satisfying, healthier, and increase productivity in the workplace. So that's kind of, it sounds narrow, but it's actually a pretty broad umbrella once you start digging into it. And my specific area of focus is in worker health and safety and well-being. So when I was in grad school, I got a certificate in occupational health psychology in addition to my PhD in industrial organizational psychology. So basically what that means is I did a lot of my coursework, a lot of my training, a lot of my research and consulting experiences were around worker health, worker physical safety, so keeping workers physically safe when they're in hazardous types of jobs, and worker well-being, kind of broadly speaking. So do people like their job? Are they happy there? Do they want to stay in their job? And what are some factors that we can increase to help them want to stay in their jobs and want and be happier and things like that. So that's kind of what I study, broadly speaking. More specifically than that, I have been doing a lot of work lately on workers who, what I would say, are marginalized in some way. So workers who are not traditionally thought of when you're studying the workplace, but maybe vulnerable in some way. So examples of those are, for instance, aging workers. So workers who are getting older and are at risk of losing their ability to work. So I study workability and interventions to help promote workability. Workers with disabilities. So I recently completed a study of an intervention to help mitigate bias in the hiring process against workers who have disabilities, both physical disabilities and mental health related disabilities. And I also study workers with chronic health conditions. So what are some of the challenges that these workers may face in the workplace when they're working, but they're also managing a health condition? And what are some of the things that organizations and leaders and supervisors can do to help make the workplace better for workers who have chronic health conditions so that they can maintain their workability and continue to be productive members of the workforce? So I guess in terms of my research group, we have a different model than a lot of the labs. So if you've been to other presentations, you've seen what other faculty do, and every professor does their stuff a little bit differently. My research tends to be things that are able to be done at a distance, which is kind of convenient given that COVID-19 is happening and we can't really be going into a lab setting anyway at this point. But so I do a lot of studies online and ask people about their perceptions and practices that are happening in the organizations and things like that. So surveys are a big method that I use. And when I'm doing interventions, so far the interventions that I've done have been able to be accessed remotely. So telephone-based coaching was one intervention that I did where workers got a certain number of phone calls with a time frame with a coach, and I studied the impacts of that on their workability. A study that I'm putting together right now, well, I've put together, but it's under review for funding and probably will be forever because of COVID at this point. It was recommended for funding like a year ago, but it still hasn't gotten any funding because of budgetary issues. So if that does get funded, what I will be doing is putting together an online intervention for workers who have various chronic health conditions. And it'll be module based. And so there will be all different modules that people will go through that sort of educate them on things like the Americans with Disabilities Act and what their rights and responsibilities are under that. things like how to manage pain in the workplace, how to approach a supervisor to talk about a needed work accommodation, how to manage sort of appearances in the workplace, things like that. Okay, so that was a lot of kind of just talking and giving an overview. I'm trying to think. So in terms of logistics, what I usually do is have meetings. Now they're on Zoom, used to be in person, but we'll get back to those once we are allowed to with COVID and everything like that. And we'll have a few periodically throughout the semester with different members of the group. And once I know that people are like interested in working in my lab, I typically will invite them to just come to a meeting and see what it's all about and see if there is a particular project that they're interested in, and if there's a place that I have for them, because it all depends on what studies I have running at the time and what I need help with. So if there's an opening and it's of interest and it's a good fit, then the student will start attending meetings, and then my group will kind of splinter off. So different projects, I have 2 people as part of the group who are working on this project over here, and 4 people working on this project over here. And every once in a while we come together and we share with each other just how we're doing, and also where each of these projects are in terms of what we've been doing and what the next steps are, to keep everyone else informed and share successes and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, I'll ask a question if you don't mind about how, and excuse the mascot here.
Oh, puppy. Very cute.
But okay, 2 questions, but I'll start with one and ask the other one maybe a little bit later on. In terms of, so would you kind of just, the way you're describing your lab, it sounds a little bit kind of like an independent study, maybe in the sense of you set up kind of some work projects for students, and then students kind of focus on that on their own and get as much done as they can. Of course, always being able to communicate with you as any questions come up and that sort of thing. And then your meetings, like how often would you meet, would you say, or?
Yeah, it depends on how many active projects I have at any one point in time. So I guess I would say it's not really an independent study, because each project has multiple people. So it might be that like the larger group gets together 3 times a semester, something like that. Or maybe I'd say once a month, that would be like on the high end, and maybe 3 times a semester on the low end. So that will be the whole group, but then I'll meet with Taria and Jack and Katie, just them, to work on another project, maybe on a weekly basis. And so each of us is involved in that project, and we'll be doing like our thing. And then I'll meet with Lena and Lydia about another project on a weekly basis. But it's not always weekly, because it depends on where the project is in its life cycle. So as it gets closer to submitting it to a journal for peer review, it gets more intense. So for a while, I was in like very close contact with one of my students almost every day until we got it submitted. But then after it gets submitted, we don't talk about it again for like 3 months. So it's all kind of it's all based on like the project and where it is in its life cycle, and what time I have to allocate it to it at any given point in the semester. So it's hard for me to say. It's not like a set structure. It's more like natural, based on the needs of the project and where I am with my schedule and how much time I have to devote to it at that point in time.
Sure, that makes sense. And I'll follow up with that in just a second, but I do have a student question. In terms of admitting or accepting students into your research group, do you have any kind of particular requirements, like specifically like research methods 1 or 2, or an application process?
Yeah, I don't currently have an application process. I should probably put one into place. So far, the way that I have gotten students into my lab is just through my research methods 2 class. So I teach that periodically. I'm teaching it again in the spring. And so if I had a student that did really well or expressed an interest in the topic I was studying, and we got to be meeting like during that class and I got to know them and they seemed like a good fit, so I just invited them to be a part of it. So I would say if you're interested, send me an email, and like what I can do is add you to the next meeting that we have so that you can get a better sense of what we're working on and things like that. And I also just need to take some time to think through like what projects I have and where the needs are. So it's nothing that would happen immediately, but it's something that we can maybe talk about for later down the line. So definitely, if you're interested, just send me an email.
Okay, and I will take a moment and let's see here, share my screen. And I've been doing this throughout different presenters' discussions with highlighting to students that we have a great website, Department of Psychological Science. You have undergraduate programs, you have all kinds of information that we're going over this week in Showcase, and I'll get back to this in just a second in terms of the research assistantship. But I think a lot of students aren't aware that we have our lovely new pictures from about a year or so ago, where we have information on how to contact us. So I literally went to the people link, and this shows us all in alphabetical order. So McGonagle's, you are, there we go, right here. And information on where in Colvard, a phone number, email is right there. And Alyssa, you also have, which I think is nice for students, not only a brief description, but a link to your website, your research website, research group. Mm-hmm. And yep. Boy, all kinds of good information here that students can take a look at in terms of the work that you're all doing and some of the accomplishments you've already had and continue to keep working through.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And I will say it's kind of a unique research group because I primarily am involved with the organizational science PhD program, which is where my graduate students typically come from. But I also have clinical psychology students in my research group. Mm-hmm. So Lena Etzel and Lydia Ruse are both in my research group, and Lydia's in the health psychology track and Lena's in the clinical psychology track. So it's really open to anyone who's interested in health in work. So I would say, even if you're not 100% sold on IO psychology, but you're thinking about it, that it might be a fit for you.
No, I think health and work are two big topics that we deal with throughout our lives. As I like to point out, in aging, it's not all over in retirement even. So yes, there's lots of good things there to be kind of thinking about, and lots of potential in the field. And I think, and correct me if I'm misrepresenting here, but IO to me can be fairly applied too. I think as our students think about ways of quote unquote helping people, this is a way you can apply, some of those skills of helping people kind of in the work setting to change and improve all kinds of things in a work setting.
Yeah, IO psychology is a very applied branch of psychology. So generally speaking, we have this thing called the scientist practitioner model. And so it's like the dual influence of science and practice. Like, we want our science to inform our practice, and we also want our practice to inform the questions that we ask in our science. So that's sort of one of our ideals that we aim toward. And if I could just plug the IO Master's program for a second too.
Please.
We do have a master's program for IO psychology here at UNC Charlotte. And so if you think you might be interested in graduate school, that's something to check out on the website.
Here we go.
Yeah. So it's a mix. We do have some older students who have been out for a while and they come back as working professionals. We also have some students who are just after graduating. So if you ever want to talk more about that program, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, and goodness, there's so many possibilities, with a large field of how can you improve things at work. There's work affects all of our lives, and there's plenty of things that can be done. So great program that we have, and we're lucky to have you and others making that available within our reach here at UNCC.
Yeah, and I will say also, like, I do get a lot of questions for students, like, about whether or not they need research experience. And I'll say that if you want to be working in the field, like doing the practice side of things, you don't necessarily need the research experience. It's really helpful if you think you might want to go into a research position or an academic position or a PhD program or something like that, but it's not something that you need to apply to master's programs typically, or to just get an applied job. So just something to keep in mind, not to discourage anyone from seeking out these opportunities, but just to have that in mind, because I think sometimes students really think, oh my gosh, I need research experience, but unless you really want to be a researcher or a PhD program, then you might not necessarily need that.
Right, absolutely. I think that's a very fair balance to give. And I think it's important to hear that in terms of options in IO psychology. I'm often telling that students, if they're, considering a master's in counseling or clinical or something, more along the therapeutic line, that again, it's maybe more of practical hands-on experience, or just even kind of looking at your own work experience and being able to translate what insights you got out of that spurs your curiosity, right? So I think that's important for our students to understand too, that you do not have to be in a research lab to succeed with all
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure not. And we look for experience when we evaluate our master's level candidates for the IO master's program. So having something like an internship in human resources, or an entry level position in human resources administration or something like that, that's actually better. We see that as better for our applicants' background for the master's program than research experiences, because we're training them for the master's program, we're training them to be workers in applied settings. So we like to know that they have some experience to know what that's like, to make sure they want to go into it.
Right, absolutely. I think that's valuable information. I will direct us back a second to undergraduate research assistantships. So if you are interested in that, I keep coming back to this, to our page with all of our opportunities listed in terms of our psychology website. And 3806 is the undergraduate assistantship in terms of being an RA for one of our faculty members. And I would familiarize yourself with this page and think about, like we said, exploring faculty's research interests, thinking about classes that you took that you liked, thinking about connections you've made with professors that you've enjoyed. There's a lot of skills to be taken from these research experiences, not just the research, but even just kind of professional skills and kind of showing initiative and taking things, and being able to work independently and also on a team, and all those kinds of valuable skills that really translate into all the skills that we uniquely define ourselves as psychology students. So lots of possibilities for us as we look through all of those opportunities. Any other questions? I'm being mindful of our time. We have about 5 minutes left. Again, that's not to pressure or hurry anybody, but that's just to keep track of time. Anyone have any other particular questions for Dr. McGonigle, whether her lab or the field of IO, her research?
Hi, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Yes. So my name is Tamia Lipscomb, and I'm a junior. And so my question is kind of, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it, but in terms of like remembering, like it's been a year since I took research methods too. So in terms of like remembering everything that I learned in that class, like how do research assistants, how much do they need to know, I guess, and like how much time do they get to like, I guess, just like how easy is it to ask for help if they need it, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely meant to be a supportive experience. And Typically, I'll have, when I have an undergrad student, you'll have a graduate student who will be kind of a point of contact for you. So some questions you might direct right to me, some questions you might direct to them and they can help you out with it. So it's not something that you would be thrown into and expected to do everything without any training. I always make sure that my students are comfortable with what I'm assigning to them, and it's not like a class. It's more it's just a different experience because it's not like a class. It's more like hands-on, and it's more like let me train you to do the specific thing that I need done. And it might be kind of mundane work, like I can't think of anything right now, like check this data or like go through these comments and create codes based on like the content in the different comments that people are leaving in surveys and things like that. So it's not like I would be asking you to take your research methods to knowledge and make critical decisions without any support or anything like that. Yeah, it's more easygoing than that.
Yeah, to me, but I think that's an excellent question. We were talking in one of our earlier sessions that research assistantship might sound intimidating because a lot of us, how warm and fuzzy do we feel about research? And now I'm going to work with a small group and a professor, and what are they going to think of me? And where in Colvard am I going to be? That strange building that we have, and all those kinds of things, right? And yeah, and it's not like you're getting drilled on research methods 1 and 2 questions, or, yes, I think that's a valuable thing to say too, that Dr. McGonagle's said. You're not getting like, you have to make independent decisions based on your research 2 information or that sort of thing. So I think that's a very valuable question to have students kind of understand. The reason I think most faculty, and again, Dr. McGonigle, by all means, chime in with what I'm saying, but I mean, we want you to be familiar, right? We want some of those concepts and terms to be familiar and in your head, and you have a sense of this is important and I need to be careful with what I'm doing here. The valuable information we're trying to put together. We want you to take it seriously and we want you to do your best work, but it's not like a life or death situation of you and your research methods 1 and 2 skills, if that helps.
Yes, definitely. That sounds correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm getting another question here, and I'm just going to read it out loud so we can all get this. Kind of a general question for all research assistantships. Do we apply to the researcher and then get accepted, then add the 3806 course to our schedule, or how does it work? Okay, so that is an excellent question. Once you have time to read through the website, I think it'll clarify that for you. But basically, you do want to contact the faculty member. The faculty member will let you know if they have openings or not. They will let you know if they have a specific application process, which many do have, and they can familiarize you with the steps to take for that. Once through that process, Alyssa, do you have anything in particular in terms of application? I know you said you didn't necessarily have one up on the website, but I've heard faculty saying they look for they look for writing samples, or for some people it's an interview, or any key features that you
I just don't have a process right now because everyone I've had so far has come through just relationships built in the class that I was in. But I'll need to do that, going forward. So I would say if you're interested, just email me and I'll probably set up some kind of an interview process for that.
Yeah, and even if you think about the class, right, Dr. McGonigle is knowing you in terms of how you function as an individual, how strong your writing skills are, how easy you are to when given feedback and able to adapt and change and learn and not go crazy with yourself, right? So all of those are important qualities when you're thinking about joining labs and those sorts of more professional development experiences, right? So to be very specific, just to clarify, you would email the professor, go through their potential application process, and then that professor would notify you if you would be accepted or not, and you would be given a permit. So something that's important in this process, I think, is that you want to give yourself some lead time. So you're not just kind of scrambling to insert a research assistantship if your other classes fill up or something like that. This is a mindful process. We want you to have thought about it some in terms of who you want to work with and setting yourself up to work well with that person and their research group. Does that make good sense and clear for everybody? So familiarize yourself, email the professor, and give yourself both time to go through whatever application process. Oh, and I'll ask this on students' behalf. Oh, wait, sorry, getting another good question. Here we go, now we're spurring things on. So let's see here. This student is interested in research psychology as a career, but have not participated in any actual psychological research. Is a research assistantship a good way to get a sense of this career? That's a great question. And I'll start, I'll let Dr. McGonagle's answer, but I will start with this. And because faculty have been saying it all day, and I think this is a valuable question and response to hear. We expect you to be kind of newbies. Nobody has had any experience with research till they start getting into research methods 1, 2, and talk to somebody to be in a lab. So we do not expect a high familiarity with being researchers or research labs. But Dr. McGonagle's, please give us your good sense of that in terms of do you have to have psychological research? And is that a good way to get a sense of if you want to do research in your career?
Yeah, I think it's a good start. I will say that it's, you'll be getting the low level of it, if that makes sense, because you're not as trained as a PhD level researcher or a grad student researcher. So you'll be seeing a small piece of it at the kind of the lower end, but you will be exposed to the process. So I think it's a good introduction and a way to, if, you might get into it and say, God, I hate this. I don't want to do this. And then you can just cross it off your list, or you might really like it and then decide to pursue graduate school. So I think it is a good opportunity to decide to, just get a little exposure, but also keep in mind that this is just a very small introduction to it. And obviously there's a lot more that goes into it, and you get more responsibility the more you go up the chain.
Yeah, and I think, I think when you get in a lab, it's important to kind of do your work well, but keep an eye on what are the grad students working on? What is Dr. McGonagle's having to get done? I think it keeps giving you a sense of, wow, what more do I need to do as part of a researcher, and what's involved in that process, and having that for an emphasis in my career or not. And I'll also say a lot of students went into research lab. They said that a number of students today have said, yes, I was contacted by my professor to join their lab, and I thought, I don't want to do research, but well, okay, this is something to do, right? And then they've ended up loving it. So I think that's kind of unique and a good feeling too, that you come in with this kind of question mark and maybe some dread, and realize, wow, this is kind of fun and interesting, and I could really roll with this. So for a lot of good reasons, it's good experience and good just professional development skills. It's putting you in a position where you are more in a role of kind of a co-worker in a way, than necessarily just kind of student with professor. So it's a professional experience, and it's a good one to think about. Great question for that too. You guys are on a roll. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, being mindful of our time and that we are 5 minutes over, which is not a problem, hopefully, for anybody. I will thank you all, and especially Dr. McGonagle's, for your words of wisdom and thoughtfulness and talking about your lab and your experiences with your students. And students, thank you for coming and for asking good questions. And I'm impressed with your interested faces. So I'm glad to keep seeing that. Oh, good. Yeah, the responses, I feel much better about applying for assistantships now. Yay, you guys are terrific.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, you are welcome. You are welcome. Kids, you're terrific. I mean that in the most loving way. Students, you are terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. McGonagle's. We'll see you all. I'll be posting these on Zoom if anybody wants to follow up. Thank you.